I've been a doctor for over 20 years now. I've seen gunshot wounds, car crash survivors, people who swallowed light bulbs, you name it. But there's one story that I still think about every time I walk into the ER. It starts like this. It was a quiet Thursday morning in March, nothing out of the ordinary. Until a man walked in, hunched over, sweating, holding his swollen belly like he was about to give birth. He looked right at me and said, "Doc, I think I'm pregnant." I froze. A grown man, bearded, in his late 30s, 6 feet tall, saying he's pregnant? I thought it was a joke, but the look in his eyes told me otherwise. He was terrified, and honestly, so was I. Before I go on, let me ask you something. What would you do if a man walked into your hospital saying he's pregnant? Would you laugh, call security, or take him seriously? Drop your answers in the comments. Trust me, you'll want to hear the rest before you decide. And if this story shocks you even halfway as much as it shocked me, consider subscribing, because what we found inside this man's body changed the way I look at medicine forever. Now, back to the story. The man's name was Mark Reynolds, a truck driver from Ohio, 37 years old, no history of mental illness, no history of weird health issues, just an ordinary guy who drove cross-country, lived alone, and loved football. But something had been wrong for months. Mark told me his belly had started swelling slowly about a year ago. At first, he thought it was just fat. He'd been eating fast food on the road, skipped workouts. It made sense. But by the time he came to me, his belly wasn't just big, it was rock hard. And it looked like he was carrying a full-term baby. He said he could feel things moving inside. Sometimes at night, it felt like something kicked. Other times, he heard gurgling. No, not stomach noises, baby noises. That's what he told me. He even took a pregnancy test, just out of desperation. And you know what's crazy? It came back positive. I couldn't believe it. I thought maybe he faked the test, or maybe it was a faulty strip, but Mark looked dead serious. "I'm not crazy," he told me. "Something's alive inside of me." I ran a physical exam right away. His blood pressure was slightly high, pulse fast. His belly was firm and distended. I tapped on the lower side. It echoed like a drum. There was definitely pressure building inside. An ultrasound was next. That's when things got weird. The technician called me in mid-scan, whispering, "You need to see this." I stepped into the dark room. Mark was lying back, looking at the monitor. And there it was. A shadow. A mass. With what looked like a spine. And a head. The moment I saw the monitor, my stomach dropped. This wasn't fat. This wasn't gas. And it definitely wasn't a tumor. Something, or someone, was inside Mark's abdomen. Now, medically speaking, men don't have uteruses. There's nowhere for a fetus to develop. But the scan didn't lie. There was a formation inside him that had a skeletal structure, curved, bent, like a fetus that stopped developing. We saw what looked like ribs, maybe an arm. I'm not exaggerating. This was not an average day at work. I asked for a CT scan immediately. Mark was quiet through all this. Too quiet. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just stared at the ceiling like he was waiting for me to tell him he was dying. After the CT, I sat down with him. "Mark," I said, "you've got a mass in your abdomen. It's large, and it's not just tissue. It's got some strange features." He looked at me and whispered, "Is it a baby?" I didn't know what to say. I said, "We need to operate." We scheduled emergency surgery that night. I called in 2 other surgeons and a specialist. We had no idea what we were walking into. A tumor with bone calcifications, an extremely rare case of teratoma, or something worse. Mark signed the consent papers. I'll never forget his last words before going under anesthesia. "If there's something alive inside me, I want you to take it out." We prepped, scrubbed in, and opened his abdomen carefully. And that's when we saw it. Not a tumor, not cancer. It was a malformed parasitic body. It had hair, teeth, limbs that had stopped developing, a face-like structure. This wasn't a baby. It was a fetal remnant. Everyone in the room went silent. One of the nurses gasped. Another whispered, "What the hell is that?" We removed the mass carefully and placed it in a sterile container. It was about 5 pounds, the size of a newborn. But this wasn't born. It had been growing inside Mark for decades. We sent the mass for pathology and DNA testing. Mark stayed in the ICU for 2 days, stable but shaken. When he woke up, the first thing he asked was, "Did you find it?" I told him, "Yes, we removed it. You're going to be okay." He asked if it was a baby. I didn't have the heart to lie. I don't know what it was yet, but it wasn't alive. His eyes welled up. "It kicked," he whispered. And I didn't argue, because part of me believed him. I remember waiting for the lab results felt like waiting for a storm to hit. Slow, heavy, and impossible to ignore. The mass we took out of Mark wasn't just some weird tumor. We needed to know exactly what it was. The pathology lab was our best hope. Days passed. Mark was still recovering in the hospital bed. Every time I checked on him, his face showed more questions than answers. I tried to keep him calm, but I could tell the truth was gnawing at both of us. Then, finally, the call came. The DNA results were in. I gathered the whole team in my office, nurses, surgeons, even the lab tech who ran the tests. We were all curious. This was beyond anything we'd seen in our careers. The DNA testing revealed something unbelievable. The fetal mass inside Mark wasn't a tumor. It was human tissue. But more than that, it had Mark's DNA. And not just Mark's, there was a second DNA pattern inside that mass. We compared it to Mark's blood sample, and the truth hit me like a punch. This mass was his identical twin brother. What the hell does that even mean? It means that, somewhere during Mark's development in his mother's womb, his twin brother stopped growing on his own. Instead of being born separately, the twin was absorbed into Mark's body. His undeveloped twin became a parasitic twin, living inside him, unnoticed, for 37 years. This rare condition is called fetus in fetu. I'd read about it in medical journals, but I never expected to see it myself, and certainly never in an adult male. Mark was overwhelmed when I broke the news to him. "Doc," he said, voice shaking, "so that means I carried my brother inside me my whole life?" "Yes," I said softly. "Your body grew around him, feeding him without you even knowing." He stared at the ceiling. "Why didn't anyone notice before?" he asked. I explained that this condition is so rare, it's often misdiagnosed as tumors or cysts. Also because Mark's belly slowly grew over many years, doctors just assumed it was weight gain or illness. The emotional impact on Mark was huge. He told me about his childhood, how he always felt like something was missing, like there was a secret inside him. The swelling started in his late 20s, but he kept ignoring it until it became unbearable. He felt betrayed by his own body. "How do you live knowing someone else was inside you? Someone you never met?" he asked. I didn't have an answer, but the story didn't end there. The surgery saved Mark's life. The parasitic twin was dangerous. It could have burst, caused infection, or worse. Removing it meant Mark's health would finally improve. Mark started physical therapy to get his strength back. For the first time in years, he could breathe deeply, without pain. But what about the baby kicking, the sounds he heard? I asked him about that again. He smiled sadly. Maybe it was just nerves, or the mass moving, or maybe my brother was trying to say hello. We shared a quiet moment. I realized that sometimes medicine isn't just about biology. It's about stories, the mysteries our bodies hold, the connections we don't understand. Mark became something of a local celebrity. His story made the news. People couldn't believe a man could be pregnant. I gave interviews but always reminded everyone, this was a medical condition, not a miracle or fantasy. Doctors around the world reached out to learn more. I published a paper describing the case in detail. Mark's life changed in many ways. He met distant relatives who were fascinated by his story. He gave talks about hope, survival, and the strange wonders of the human body. And me? I kept thinking about that day. About the man who walked in saying he was pregnant. About the tiny life inside him that wasn't really a life, but a brother. It's a case I'll never forget. Before we move on to the final part of this unbelievable story, I have a question for you. If you were Mark, how would you feel knowing you carried your twin inside your body for decades? Would you feel angry, sad, or amazed? Write your thoughts in the comments below. I'm curious to see what you think. And if you're still hooked on this story, hit that subscribe button